Good morning and welcome to the Saturday special of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Yoga has become a craze all over the world, especially since coming in of the new government in India, which is dedicated towards spread of yoga, and so much so that even you I know declared one day to be the Yoga Day, International Yoga Day. But is yoga just a contortion of the body to maintain good physical health? And that's what people presume to be. Go in for shavasana, go in for sasana, go in for lotus pose, sit cross-legged and press your fingers, the thumb and the little finger, and so on and so forth. It's not that, you know. As a matter of fact, when Patanjali wrote Yoga Shastra, he did not have only Hatha Yoga in mind. I don't indulge in these yogic exercises, but would you believe that I believe in Brahma Yoga? I believe in Yoga Shastra. I believe in Gyan Yoga. As a matter of fact, yoga, if properly understood in its entirety, is not a contortion of the body. It's a control of the mind, it's a control of the brain, it's a control of the thought, and it's a quest for knowledge. And that's the base of good life. If you look at Gyan Yoga, and Gita Gyan is described as both Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. And what does it mean? That means knowledge of the highest reality and means to its attachment. While the truth is expounded in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's experience of the cosmic vision is described in the 11th chapter, which is Vishabrup Darshan Yoga, the yoga of the universal form. Vishabrup now has come to mean the shape of the God. No, it's not. It is in fact the ultimate reality, the universal form. And that is what yoga is. And if you listen to the several glorious manifestations of the Lord in the 11th chapter called Vibhuti Yoga, people who have read Mahabharata, and I don't know whether they are aware that there's a lot of talk about Brahma Vidya, Yoga Shastra, Vishabhup Darshan Yoga, and Vibhuti Yoga. Now, in this chapter called Vibhuti Yoga, Arjuna wants to hold Krishna's immortal form with his own eyes. He wants to look at it, absorb it. And then what happens? He is granted the divine vision. It's almost like, Sanjay, who transmitted the details of the war to the king, because the king was blind, Dhritarashtra. So Sanjay was able to have a look at the war from a distance. That was the divine insight he has. And Arjuna is also given this divine eye, the divine sight. And then when he looks around in all the animate and inanimate things, Arjuna sees the entire Kaurav force, including chariots, entering like a fast-flowing river into a wide open jaws of Lord Krishna's terrifying form. So whether people are your enemy or friend, whatever the circumstances may be, all are a part of the life stream. The life stream ultimately merges into the ultimate reality. And this is called Vibhuti Yoga. Now, people like you and me may not have that divine vision, but we can train our minds, our intellect, our consciousness, so that we can visualize the unity in the diversity. the unifying thread. And if we can do that, we have understood the real base of the human life. Arjuna is amazed. He questions in bewilderment. And Krishna then says that he is the all-destroying cause, time. And those who come into being dissolve and merge in him. I was, I am, I shall be. So Arjuna does make to realize the divine being, omnipresent, is contained in everything. It's omniscient, it's omnipotent. Descartes says, I am, I believe, therefore I am. And here it is, if you have got belief, you are, but not as an individual, but a part of the whole cosmos. Now he does everything as a part of the divine play, a human being. So whether Arjuna engages in the battle or not, his kith and kin have been vanquished already, and he is just an instrument to enact what has already been done, basically. So in reality, the ultimate has prevailed, but there is an instrument to bring it to life, and that is Arjuna. For a man, there is a present, there is a past, there is a future. For a person who is divine, who has got that spiritual power inside, is meaningless, past, present. The three infinite periods of time merged into eternal now. And that's why I always say, live in the present, now. Past will merge into it and future will emerge from it. So what we talk, when I talk of the present, is in fact the real yoga's conception. And Arjuna is unaware of this and therefore suffers a mental breakdown. Now, the all-inclusive vision, that's the basis of Hindu way of life, is universal in nature and birthright of entire mankind. It brings awareness that one being alone exists, and what we see or perceive is nothing but this one and the non-dual being. This being the fact, how can we dare to treat anything with disdain and disrespect? How can we say that this is despicable and this is not? Who are we to judge? All things are moving temples of the great reality. Right or wrong, but they are worthy of respect and reverence. The whole human life should be a dynamic and creative process of bringing maximum benefit and welfare to all. And this is what even the Sikh prayer is. At the end of the Sikh Ardas, the saying is Sarpada Bhala, good of everybody, even your enemies. And that's the base of a good life. Because the enmity is something very temporary, very transient. But ultimately the life connectivity is there. So the objective of revealing the Lord's universal form, the Vishnu, was to impart the secret of how to live in this world and yet remain in the state of inner communion with the Lord. And that's the base of the good life, and that is what yoga is. Now, there is another part which I should not ignore. Yoga is training of the mind, training of the intellect, training of the consciousness, but it is also training of the body, because a sound mind in a sound body. So Hatha Yoga strengthens the body through systematic physical activity and breathing exercises. And that is what yoga, people presume it to be. So it's just a part of yoga, not the complete yoga. So while Hatha Yoga strengthens your body, Bhakti Yoga purifies the heart by unswerving devotion to the spirituality, and then Karma Yoga, do your work. Karma Yoga renders nobility to actions. Jnana Yoga, which is great. Jnana is knowledge. It illuminates the consciousness through self-inquiry. Study of scriptures and meditation There's a 14th century Tamil poet mystic, Badrigaya, and he says it's knowledge, which knowledge? Knowledge through knowing knowledge. It's a knowledge which knows knowledge, through knowing knowledge. So the Gyan Yoga is also called Gyan Marg, the path of knowledge, wisdom. Is also called Buddhi Yoga, the discipline of the intelligence. It's also called Brahm Vidya. And the science of Brahm explains the difference between the self and the non-self. The knower and the known, the permanent and the transient. So if you look at the whole, whether it's Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Gyan Marg, Buddhi Yoga, Brahm Vidya, the whole compendium of human life is put into yoga. And that is what, if you know yoga, then you know how to live. Live for goodness of yourself and for all. And as a matter of fact, since Brahma is eternal, pure and of nature free, so you've got to experience it. And then comes the question of perception, inference, scriptural testimony. They are the source of knowledge, your perception, your consciousness, your gut feeling, your inference, your ability to deduce the scientific spirit of inquiry. What, why, how? And of course, the testimony of the knowledge contained in the scriptures and the books of knowledge. And this knowledge is both para and apara. Para is infinite. Apara is finite. So it's both finite and infinite. And the former, the apara knowledge, relates to the higher dimension of the being, and apara to the changing phenomena. Para liberates, apara binds. And binds to what? The spatio-temporal world. So Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Brahm Vidya, apart from Hatha Yoga, which is for the body, are much more important. And Jnana Yoga enlightens you about the true nature of existence. It enlightens you about the identity of Brahm and Jivatma. What is Jivatma? The individual soul. And there are 5 koshas. Koshas are the layers of the soul. The soul is not one. This is something which is very special to yoga, that even the soul has been defined and presented. And what are those layers of the soul? First, the physical, vital, mental, wisdom, and bliss. And bliss is the ultimate. And you know how is that? It's chakras, the circles, which are whirling energy centers of the subtle body and ultimate purpose of life. So if you can conquer all that, you are supreme. And the person who is a student of Jnana Yoga and Brahm Vidya, then what happens? He develops the virtue of Vivek. Vivek is a sense of discrimination. And discrimination is an essential part of wisdom. Then he also develops the virtue of Vairagya. Vairagya is detachment, non-attachment. You are not attached to the material things. And then you get the ability of Abhyas. Abhyas is practice. And we know practice makes a man perfect. So these 3, Vivek, Vairagya, Abhay, discrimination, detachment, and practice, can enable you to control the senses. And who controls the senses? The 5 layers of the mind, where there is physical, vital, mental, wisdom, and bliss. And then when it happens, you perceive the cosmic self in individual self. You represent the Brahm. And mind of yours is a cosmic mind. Your consciousness is cosmic consciousness. And that is what yoga is. And yet, Jnana Yoga is not merely an intellectual pursuit. No, here it is. There are no watertight compartments in yoga. The goal is to transcend the mind, which is limited in its vision and rigid in its conception. To transcend that so there is limitless vision, that the conceptions are flexible accordingly. So, the end result is that if you want to have a good life, then intellectual engagement with Supreme Reality is not enough. Until you realize oneness with all life forms, complete cosmos, complete biodiversity, and integrates the individual life with the divine consciousness. The Jnana Yoga postulates three ways to grow in spirituality. First is Shravan, listen about the ultimate truth from who knows it. Second is Manana, reflecting about the truth. So listen to it, then reflect. Then Nidhyasana, meditate on this. How far is correct? Here comes the scientific spirit of inquiry. Test, examine, then reject or accept. So the spiritual practitioner undergoes 4 stages. And not only that, even materially. The first is seek. Second is know. Third is become. And fourth is be. So seeking knowledge, knowing it, becoming knowledge itself, and being the ultimate. So a person who knows much about Brahm Vidya offers a sense and life energy in the fire of yoga of self-control kindled by knowledge. Then you are free from the vices and are liberated while living. Birth and the death relate to the corporeal beings, the human life, and the journey to the infinite and endless cycles. Here I'd like to refer to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. When you realize the absolute truth, you see without seeing, smell without smelling, taste without tasting, speak without speaking, hear without hearing, touch without touching, think without thinking, know without knowing. For there is nothing which separates you from the cosmos, from the Brahm, in which all the polarities meet. And if in this life you can reach that stage where all the polarities meet, who's your enemy and what's the material attachment? So as you progress in knowledge, you move from external to the internal form of worship. So going to the church, to Gurdwara, to temple is not important because your mind is that and you find one reality shining as in many. As a matter of fact, the yogic path of Jnana, Bhakti and Karma are interconnected in a very subtle manner. So, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Brahm Vidya. And then that is why the theistic schools of Hindu philosophy, whether they are Vaishnava or Shaiva or Shakti or Samartha, they emphasize each other individually, but you synergize them. Yoga synergizes different schools. And after the synergy, the basic purpose is to realize that you are a part. No, not a part. You are the whole creation. You are the Godhead. And in whatever form you perceive, you are part of that. And being a part of that, you are that. And that is what good life is. And that's what yoga is. So contortion of the body is just this tiny, tiny part of yoga. The others are much more important. Adopt them, accept them, implement them in your lifestyle, and then you will find the beauty of life. Thank you.